So how did the Man United stuff come about?
I'm not sure, I think after that game where I scored 2 goals, I think there was a lot of talk about me. There was a lot of rumours about Manchester United, Man United watching. As a player, you play well, and people say, "Oh, so and so in the stands," or "So and so in the stands." And I remember going to training. Can't remember what day it was, but I was at morning time, and Ronnie Boy said, "Oh, listen, I need to take you somewhere." So I said, "Oh, okay." So he took me to this hotel. I think it was Wolverhampton Abbey Hotel. I think it was
on the roundabout.
That's the one, didn't you?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so Alex Ferguson was sitting there with a cup of tea in the room, with his legs crossed, cup of tea. Couldn't believe it. I thought, wow. But I was only like 20. But I knew who Sir Alex Ferguson was. I knew the greatest of the man. Not even at that time, but I knew he was manager of Manchester United. So it didn't take a genius to work out what he was there for. So we had a conversation. He said that he'd had a conversation with John Lyall. John Lyall said, "Listen, he's a bit of a rogue, but, if you treat him right, then you get the best out of him, So that was that, really. It was funny, though, because West Ham, as a training facility, was very, very good. It was one of the first teams to have an indoor AstroTurf, at Chapel Heath. The stadium was, Upton Park was what it was. And going to Man United, we used to train at the Cliff, which wasn't the greatest training ground in the world, you know what I mean? So it wasn't like, as the facilities, where I've come to a kind of bigger club. It's only when you actually go to the stadium and see how big it is and the history behind it. But for me, it was more the players that I was walking into the changing room with. No disrespect, because at West Ham I played with Alan Devonshire, Trevor Brooking, Billy Bonds, those greats, Ray Stewart. So I played with great, great players. Mm-hmm. But when you I always wanted to be like Brian Robson. He was one player that I wanted to emulate as a player. When I looked, I thought, I want to be like him, So to actually walk into a change room and see him now, Mark Hughes and people like that, it was, you get a bit tingly, and you kind of think, I actually felt the first 2 months I didn't belong there. I didn't think, and rightly so, I was only 20, 21, and I think, well, I'm not good enough at this yet to try and be where I am today. And to be fair, the first 20 games I didn't play. I played more games right back than I did in midfield. Did you really? Yeah. I remember I played about 8-9 games. That's why in the FA Cup final in 89, 90, I wore number 2 on my back.
I didn't know that.
People didn't know that, see?
Yeah, okay.
And I remember I played 6 or 7 games right back because Webby was playing in midfield with Brian Robson. Yeah. And I was loving it. I thought, this is easy. I could play this role. I didn't want to play it, but Fergie said you could play it because you're quick and strong. And I was flying it right back. And then on the Sunday, we played Liverpool. And he was playing left wing.
Who's playing left wing?
For Liverpool.
Go on.
John Barnes.
Barnesy. Okay, so you got no chance.
Absolutely roasted. I got my pants pulled down. Fergie said to me, "That's the last time you'll ever play right back again." I said, "That's a joking, Kev. I've just played against one of the best players you've ever seen."
Did you have a problem as a midfielder, right? Thinking, okay, there's my idol, Warren Robson, one of the best midfielders this country, in my opinion, has ever produced.
Yeah, I agree.
You go into the dressing room and he's playing you right back. Were you cool with that?
I was just pleased to be there. I was pleased because I said I was in awe of Brian Robson and people like that. More so Brian Robson. I was in awe of him. And so I was just happy to be there. I was happy to just go on the pitch. I mean, the first game we played Millwall at home, beat them 5-1. And I thought, this is easy, cigar in the mouth, The next week went to Main Road and got stuffed 5-1 by Manchester City. It was the worst day of my career. Couldn't get out of the hotel. Fans, it was horrendous. We'd signed Gary Pallister, we'd signed Danny Wallace. We were getting abused by the fans. So it was the first 6 months was tough because I wasn't playing.
Our chat is going to be possible to cram all this into the next 18 minutes, but I want to get as much as I can. And sometimes you tell me stuff off air and I'm like, I need the world to hear that conversation. You talked about the first time you met Eric Cantona and what he was like when he came in that dressing room, and you thought he was like the missing piece of that jigsaw and the aura that he brought with him. Can you just go back over that? So where were you when you found out he was coming from Leeds?
Oh, it was a strange one because I know that Howard Wilkinson was a manager at Leeds at the time, and I think he wanted to buy Dennis Irwin from us, and so I'm led to believe. And then Sir Alex was talking, and he said, "Oh, what about Eric?" And apparently, so he said, "Yeah, £1 million." So Fergie couldn't believe it. at the time, and we were all like, who's this Cantona bloke? We'd seen him score a hat-trick for Leeds in the Charity Shield.
That's right.
And we thought, who's this Cantona bloke? You know, I mean, I don't know a lot about him, but he looks half decent. And then he first day he bowls into the training ground, bowls into the change room, and just, he's 6 foot, probably 6'2" at the thing, but he looked about 8 foot. The way he just walked in, it looked like he'd been there longer than Brian Robson.
Really?
He just had that persona and that presence. You know, as I said, I went back to when I first went to United, I was like, a bit, apprehensive not to. And I was a little bit younger than Eric, but it's still daunting to go to play for Manchester United, as we see now for some players. But he just felt like he had that face to say, well, I belong here. This is I'm here for you. And he actually raised the bar. He raised the bar. I'm not saying we wouldn't have won the league without him, but he made sure we won the league because he was just on a different level.
Was he on a different level, even on the training pitch? The first, I don't know if you can remember the first time you saw him training, but you were like, wow.
What I do remember, and it always hit home to me, is that every time we used to go to training in the morning, he used to be in at 9:30 on the training ground. We didn't used to train till 10:30. 9:30 on the training ground, warmed up himself, and he was just doing technical stuff for an hour, kicking the ball up in the air, chest, left foot, right foot, left foot. He did it every day. And by the time 2 months down the road, I was doing it with him, Giggsy, Sharpie, just working on our weaknesses. And you think about, that's the effect he had on us, as players, that's what he gave us. And he was a special man. He was a giant of a man, and great player. I think the hardest thing for me at the time was because I was trying to 26, 27, never wanted to leave Man United at the time. So it was more of a kind of family decision, taking Thomas over, who was only 2 at the time, learning a different language, learning a different culture. And I was happy where I was staying. Looking back on it, it was probably the best move I ever did. It probably was the best football I ever played. Macca would tell you, the food they eat, the weather, everything about it, the football, it made me a better player. And it was something I'm glad I really did.
Why did you choose to go there?
I didn't choose. I mean, Man United accepted a bid for me from Inter Milan. So, like anything, when someone accepts a bid,
you still could have turned it down. I
could have turned it down, but it was a case of, I didn't feel right after 6 years at Man United. They'd accepted a bid behind my back. Wasn't too pleased about that, and I was kind of worried from a family point of view. From a football point of view, I think it could work. From a family point of view, I was a bit concerned, and I think as I came back 2 years later, that was because of family reasons. But back will tell, it was fantastic. I loved it out there. I'm glad to see that younger kids are now going out there. I think it was different in my time because everyone spoke Italian. There was no English going about in 96, 97, same in Spain. Nowadays it's more global, everyone's speaking English, so it's easy for 17-year-old, 18-year-old kids to go out there and settle in a comfortable environment.
How big of a problem was that for you then, the language barrier?
I can't take it seriously. I'm waiting for the punchline with him.
There's no punchline. It must be a big issue. It must be.
It was, especially the first couple of months. I struggled the first couple of months. I mean, going into the first meeting and going out for dinner, which would normally last 3 or 4 hours. Everyone's speaking Italian. You kind of sat on the edge of the table, haven't got a clue what they're saying, and you kind of have these just kind of negative thoughts in your head to say, I think I made the wrong decision here.
Did you think that at the time?
I did, because my wife Claire was struggling with the language. Thomas was going to Italian school, he was only 2. So there was a lot of things that I felt really comfortable with. But once Roy Hodgson came in, because the manager at the time was Ottavio Bianchi, and he played me left wing. I was playing left wing. I just played 6 years at centre midfield for Man United, and he put me in a left wing position. So that didn't help. But once Roy Hodgson came in and I grasped the language, started interacting with my teammates, Claire did for a certain while, then it became a lot easier.
So when you say it was brilliant and I learned loads, what was it that was so good about that experience, from your perspective?
Well, one, I lived on Lake Como, which is probably one of the nicest places in Milan. 2, just the way, the discipline about the training. We used to get there in the morning, we should do 45-minute stretch in the morning.
How different was it to what you'd done in your previous few seasons at United?
It was a lot different, because the training used to last a lot longer, and it wasn't just based on going in, warm up, 20 minutes, straight into games. Here it was like you're stretch for 45 minutes, you train for an hour and a half, then you stretch for another 45 minutes. The food that you ate, made me feel better. It was more based on a technical game. It wasn't as quick and high octane as the Premier League. It was very slow, then fast in the last third minute. And, I remember when I first played, and we played, I think it was Perugia, and I've got the ball and I've sprayed it out to Xavier Zanetti. And you wait for the crowd to applaud, thinking, they didn't do nothing. And I thought, they're not having me, you know what I mean?
Really?
Because they expect you to do that.
Yeah.
Whereas in England,
Yeah.
they go, what a ball that is. And that's what the expectations were different, but it made me fitter, stronger, made me more of a man. You have to grow up quickly when you go abroad, and I think, for these young kids now, they have to grow up quickly. I think I always kind of felt, and I've said this time and time again, and it's no disrespect to both teams. I would never gone from Manchester United straight to Liverpool. I would never gone from Liverpool straight to Manchester United. That's a cardinal sin. Okay. When I left to go to Inter Milan, I didn't want to leave Manchester United. Okay. When I came back from Inter Milan, Man United had first refusal on me. So I could easily come back to Man United. They turned that decision not to take me back. Okay.
They had the option to take you back, and they didn't do it.
Man United had the option to take me back. Okay. Whether I would have gone back, I don't know. But all I know is that I had 2 years at Inter. I didn't want to go back from Inter. I had another 3 years left on my contract. Obviously, this family situation was difficult, so we came back. We just signed Ronaldo for the next season, and I wanted to play with him, but I obviously didn't get the luxury of doing that. Peter Robinson came over from Liverpool. We sat down, we had lunch. We agreed that was the way I was going to go. I loved the Northwest. I spent 6-7 years there at Man United. I knew Jamie Redknapp, I knew Robbie Fowler, I knew David James. So it was just easy to settle in.
Was there any doubt in your mind that it was the right decision?
None whatsoever, because I've always looked at the Liverpool fans as knowledgeable people, and just as a city, they look after their own, and as soon as you become their own, they take you in, irrespective of whether you played here, whether you played there, they take you in. And from day one, I had not one problem with the Liverpool.
So there's
people.
nobody better to ask. Which is a bigger club, Manchester United or Liverpool?
Liverpool. I think you're trying to get me killed here, Jim. Listen.
Nobody better to ask.
I think when you kind of look at the history of both clubs, and you go back from the 80s when Liverpool were basically winning everything,
and the 70s.
70s, sorry,
and 80s.
And 80s, yeah. I forgot you're a Liverpool fan, sorry. And then you go back to United, that was in the 90s. There's always been that rivalry between the two. Liverpool are global, and I don't think it's just as a football club, but when you go back to the Busby Babes, that affected the whole world. What happened then, and that's why Liverpool are going to be bigger than at most teams. When things that make United don't go well, they're back of the page, they're front of the page, So I think there's a lot of combinations. Liverpool, I love both, playing for both. I thought the fans at Liverpool were they're acknowledgeable fans. You never see Liverpool fans boo their players. I've watched a lot of games. They very rarely boo their players, and Man United fans are too. So it must have been difficult for Liverpool fans to accept me, but they did. And I still live in the world to this day. And all I do when I look back on my career is that every game, I wasn't the most talented player, but every game I like to think I'll commit myself 110%.
And in terms of expectation, which shirt, United or Liverpool, which shirt weighed heaviest?
It was different.
Some questions.
Mate United shirt, I always felt the expectation at Mate United was to win. And like it is now. When you go to Mate United, you're expected to win and win and win. Not to say that wasn't the case at Liverpool. The difference when I went to Liverpool was that the players didn't have the mentality to want to win a title. Listen, we had a very, very good side. Fowler, McManaman, Redknapp, Patrick Berger, okay? But we didn't have the mentality and the desire to do what it took to win a title.
Yeah.
And that was the only difference in between the two.
Does that frustrate you today?
It does. It really, really does. Because I mentioned Robbie Fowler, I mentioned Michael Owen with David James, with some fantastic players. And I'm just trying to compare. I don't compare the two clubs as clubs. I compare the times that I went into each club and the players' mentality and attitude to try and do something, And when you look at these two mega clubs, to think they haven't won a title for 15, 20 years ago and Man United, it's such a shame. But I enjoyed both my time at both those clubs.